Today's practice is focused on the kidney and bladder meridians, mostly the inside of your leg and the outside of your leg. So we're going to do a bunch of poses that focus on that area. In Chinese medicine, there is a belief that the kidneys are the source of most of your energy, or all of your energy, and that's where it comes from. So with that in mind, if you are feeling a little depleted or a little run down, or maybe feel like you need more sleep or haven't gotten enough and need more rest, perhaps this area has a little bit of an imbalance. So we're going to look at rebalancing that out. We're going to start with a couple of props that you might want to have nearby. As always, I always suggest taking a blanket underneath, folded up so it makes it a little bit softer on top of a cushy mat or carpet. I do suggest having a second blanket and or beach towel folded up so you get about a couple of inches worth of height that's kind of squishy. For this practice, we're going to include a couple of extra things that you might not have in your house, but you can make other things to do with. We would need a block or a bolster. These can be bought online for very reasonable prices, and they're really useful for restorative, yin, any other practice. I highly suggest people use them or buy one, just one, you only need one. And we'll use those here in just a few minutes, but go ahead and start with your folded up blanket or towel. So if you don't have a bolster or a block, you can always use like your folded up blanket, or you could use a step stool of some kind or something like that. So we're gonna come into butterfly to start with. Always a great pose to start with in your yin practice. You're going to walk your feet out so you make more of a diamond shape. So in a normal yang class, you'd want your heels a little bit closer so you get more stretch in the outside of the hips, but we're really looking at the inside seam of the body. So walk your feet out as far as you can go before they start to just separate. So when you get to the point, there's a little space in between. Lucy's not helping me. Then that's where you want to go. You're just going to kind of slide your hands down. Fold forward. Now, if you're newer to yin and it's a little bit of an interesting practice for you, we do hold these poses quite a bit longer than a yang posture in a normal class. And the idea is not to muscle into it. So you don't want to push yourself to fold over super deep. You don't want to go to your maximum or 100% or 110%. What you want to do is just sort of go down to about your 65% or so. And then sort of allow gravity to just take you where you want to go. So after a few breaths, you might find you can drop your chin to your chest, or maybe you start to fold over, your shoulders start to curve over. Let your upper back round. And just take some nice deep breaths. Allow the stretch. You might feel this on the outside seam of the leg, the inside seam, and some people, myself included, feel it a bit on the hamstring on the left or the right. If you feel yourself wanting to really pull a little deeper into this posture, take your hands and just flip them palms facing up toward the ceiling so that you are not feeling compelled to go a little bit further. And just take note of your breath. Find a little rest and comfort here. This is a great opening posture for any yin practice. Helps you find center, find your breath. Settle yourself into the practice. If you have a pet, you know that basically they're going to get involved regardless of whether you want them to or not. So have your pet join you on the mat. With yin, you can kind of work around them so you're not moving around and you won't end up stepping on them or kicking them or hurting them. They'll just kind of keep you company. Just going to take about 5 more deep breaths here. Maybe allow your hands to drop down to the floor and just curve that back over. Let gravity take its way. And then inhale, start to press your hands all the way back up. And take a couple of breaths here. It's always good to take a short rest, a few breaths in between each posture of yin, just to let your body assimilate back to position before and to sort of like Shavasana, take stock, see where you're at. So we're going to take deer pose next. So we're going to take that left leg, curve it out to the side, the toes turn out to the side. I like to take my blanket and just keep my bum just a little bit on the edge of the blanket. Tuck that leg back. One hand in between the knees, one hand on the outside. You want to feel a nice lift through the center, but you don't want to engage the muscles, and you might want to find yourself, you will find yourself probably wanting to engage these muscles on the quadricep. Just let those muscles relax. So there are usually 2 kinds of rotations for most people. Some people are internal rotators, which would be our left thigh right now. And some people are more comfortable with an external rotation. If your knee comes all the way down to the floor whenever you're seated in a seated posture, you probably have an external rotation. I myself am an internal rotator. So this knee is more comfortable for me than the other. The nice thing about this pose is we take a look at both bladder and kidney because we're opening the inside seam and the outside seam. So we're getting the benefits of both here. Deer pose, we only hold about a minute. So maybe 3 more deep breaths here. And try to notice your breath and maybe slow it down just a little bit. So maybe you have a 5 or 6 count inhale and exhale. Go ahead and bring that left leg back into your butterfly pose. Take a nice deep breath here. Sit up nice and tall. You're going to switch legs. So take that right foot around your pet. Tuck it back behind you. Toes are out to the side. I like to keep my foot flexed, but you can keep it kind of either way. Hand in between each knee. Lift up and lengthen the spine. This will get you a little bit more stretch in the front side of the right quadricep as well. And because you're on your second side, begin to notice the difference between side A and side B, left and right. You will often find one side is a little bit more sticky, a little bit more difficult to move. One side will usually drop a little further to the floor, so you have a little bit more flexibility on one side. Just things to keep in mind and to notice. And last 3 deep breaths here. Go ahead and bring that right foot back into center. Stay in your butterfly pose. Take some nice deep breaths. Then you're going to go back to taking that left leg out to the side, but this time you're going to flip the foot over. So hero pose. This is going to be a half hero pose on this side. So you're going to take your thumb, hook it back behind the calf muscle and sort of pull it off to the side and down and back. So you can flip that foot over and you have the heel right beside the hip. Your right foot, you're going to pull into the center. This is where that bolster or block would come in handy for this. So keep yourself a little bit propped on the blanket behind you. You may be able to fold forward without this, but this is a good prop to have here. You're going to start to fold yourself forward. So this is baby giraffe pose. So if your left hip comes off the floor, that's okay. Take some nice deep breaths. If you have to, you can move those calf muscles again. This is always my tougher side. Learn to kind of live with it. Or if the bolster's too far for you, you can always just lean forward and take your palms down to the floor. Try to feel that left hip get a little heavier, and even though it may not be touching the floor, you do want it to feel a little bit weighty, so as if it's drifting toward the floor. If you can come down to forearms or forehead onto the bolster or block or whatever surface you want, go ahead and come all the way down. I sometimes feel a stretch in my calf, in my hip. And as each breath and each exhale, you can find a little bit more release, letting go of the tension in the muscles and just releasing into that yin posture. So if you have never heard of giraffe posture, this is sort of a new pose. In my playing around with my own practice, I found this pose and just thought, this is a great pose for getting that kidney and bladder meridian, as well as the outside of the hip. And so it was a little bit more comfortable for me than a full or a half hero pose. Just about 4 more deep breaths here. Start to slowly bring yourself back up. Shift that right leg out. Take that left foot to the bottom. You're going to shift sides. So go ahead and take that right foot back, flip the toes over so the top of the foot is face down on the floor. Roll that calf muscle out of the way. Bring that left foot in, sort of in a pinwheel shape here. So if one side is more open than the other for you, here's your kind of chance to see that. Go ahead and fold forward. So once again, that right hip is going to lift a little bit off the floor. Of course, if this is too much for your knee, go ahead and take your foot out a little bit further toward the edge of the front edge of the mat so that you have a little bit less compression in that knee joint. This also helps put some acupressure on the top side of your foot, and acupressure on the foot is really, really helpful. Top and bottom of your foot has a lot of reflexology points in which each organ system can be, each meridian to each organ system can be touched on there. So a foot massage obviously feels really good, but it also does a lot to help balance your system out and realign the meridian lines as well. It's even better reason to get a foot massage. Once again, think about taking all of that muscle action out, not trying to push yourself to lean forward, but just letting your shoulders get heavy, your hips get heavy. On this side, I feel it deep in my IT band or TFL, which is the outside edge of your left hip at this point. But you can feel it any number of places. Maybe you find you can come down a little bit lower. And a little bit means a centimeter, a millimeter, anything. And maybe you find that after you did that, that didn't feel so good, so you can come back up a little bit. Just 2 more deep breaths here. Start to press yourself all the way back up. You can take that bolster or blanket off to the side, bring that left foot out, bring that right foot out. Sit on the very edge of your blanket. Bring your heels a little bit closer, maybe butterfly your butterfly wings apart a little bit. Take some nice deep breaths. Think really tall spine. It's really interesting to feel after that pose. I can feel a lot of energy running down the inside and outside of the legs suddenly because we've sort of taken that compression factor off. The tops of the feet have been sort of massaged. And anytime you put acupressure on the feet, the tops or bottoms of the feet, you affect all the meridians, the lower body meridians. So that would be your kidneys, liver, bladder, gallbladder, all those things, intestines, everything down, stomach. And so it's a great way to sort of affect change with one pose, right? Go and take your hands to the outsides of your knees. Pull those knees together. Walk the feet out. Maybe wave them around a little bit. Massage the legs a little bit. Get some feeling back in there. Wiggle your toes. And we're ready for our next pose, which is Sphinx pose. So go ahead and come onto your belly. You can take that blanket off to the side. You won't be needing that. Move everything off and out of the way, including the cat. Come onto your belly. Take your arms out in front of you, forearms down. If you have a lot of shoulder discomfort in this pose, you can always take the elbows out a little further away so you get a little bit less compression in the shoulder. I like them about equal underneath or a little bit ahead. Palms together, outside of the fingertips pressed into the floor. You're gonna wiggle your hips a little bit and loosen up the legs and let the heels either roll in or out, whatever feels comfortable for you. Drop the lower hips down. Engage the belly button just a little bit to protect yourself from overbending the back. And then just begin to sink in. We call this schlumping. You sort of let the center of the back sink forward, the chest sink toward the floor. You can look out past your fingers and keep your back in alignment, or drop your chin to your chest. If you find once you drop your chest further and further in between your shoulders that is uncomfortable, engage a little bit of your forearms and press into the floor, lift up just a little bit. Keep that navel engaged. If you're comfortable slumping down really deeply, you can take that chest and belly way down to the floor. Take some nice deep breaths into the back body. In yin, we try to find that posture and just hang on to it. If we move, it has more to do with gravity. Sometimes it takes a few breaths, a little bit of wiggling around and shifting to find that perfect pose where you can settle and you can say it's sort of a sustainable pose. And when you find it, you just kind of hang out there. Noticing sensations, maybe from previous postures or this posture. Maybe after a few breaths, you find yourself wanting to drop your chin a little bit more to your chest. Just 2 more deep breaths. Now you can either stay here for the next minute, or you can take seal pose. And seal pose is walking your hands out to the side, turning the fingers out, thumbs forward, lifting up, lowering the shoulders down, and letting the belly and chest roll forward, still keeping that navel engaged. Relaxing the lower back, the hips. If you feel like you want more, you can always walk your hands a little bit more up, but not engaging the muscles. So if your glutes and your legs start to kind of fire up, you might want to lower down a little bit more. Keep those ears away from the shoulders. And 1 more deep breath. Wherever you're at, go ahead and bring your hands all the way down. You can cross your palms, rest your forehead on the backs of your hands. Maybe rock your hips side to side a little bit. Our next pose is a little variation on frog pose. So you're going to take the left knee out to the left. Line up your ankle with your knee, knee with the hip, flex the toes, rest your forehead on your hands and just hang out here, or you can take your hands out to the side, turn your head to the right. This just puts a little bit of acupressure on that inside of the right leg, inside the left leg. And slowly start to bend that knee, bring that leg back in line. You're going to switch sides, taking the right leg out to the side, lining up that knee with the hip, ankle with the knee, flex the toes, turn your head the same direction. And slowly start to take that leg back in. Take your hands underneath the shoulders, press all the way up. So here's where you might want to take that block 1 more time. So that was sort of a softer version of frog pose. We're going to take the slightly less soft version. You're going to take your knees out to the side, line them up with your hips. So you don't want to be too far back or too far forward. Turn the toes out, walk the knees a little bit wider. This helps with the blanket there so you can find your grounding here. Take yourself either propped up on that block, you can put your forehead on it, which is sort of restful. We're just gonna stay here about 10 breaths. And start to lift all the way back. Bring those feet in first. So fold your toes back, press the elbows, drag those knees together, and come back to child's pose. About 5 deep breaths, hands either outside in front of you or alongside your hips. Inhale, come all the way up. Take your block or prop off to the side and go ahead and come all the way down onto your back. So go ahead and take your right leg, cross it over your left. Now you can tuck the toe behind that back leg if you want to. It's a lot of a stretch, so if that doesn't feel too great for you, that's okay, just wrap it normal. Arms out to the side. Forearms down on the floor, wherever you can get forearms and entire arm down on the floor. Lift your hips, shift them over to the right, drop your knees over to the left. You can look up at the ceiling or you can turn and look over the right shoulder if that feels better. Notice how your body feels in this posture. Allow your breath to soften and deepen. Last 2 deep breaths. Engage your core, turn your head to look back to the center and pull those knees back up through the middle. Line your hips back up, unwind. Cross that left over right. Once again, you can take the full twisted or you can take sort of a 3/4 twist. Lift the hips over to the left, drop those knees over to the right, look straight up or turn and look over your left shoulder. Just 3 more deep breaths here. Start to turn your head back to center, engage your core, bring those knees back up through the center. Shift your hips back down the middle, unwind. You can rock your knees a little bit side to side and then come back to center, drop your knees toward one another and just relax for a few breaths. Letting that twist come back to the middle, feeling the energy up and down the spine. And then you can either stay here for Shavasana with your feet as wide as the mat, knees dropped together, or you could take your heels out to the corners of the mat, arms alongside the body, tuck the shoulder blades underneath. Lift your heels a little bit, press through the heel, drop the heels down. Take some nice deep breaths. Checking in with your body again, seeing where it's at. Allowing your breath to slow and deepen. Maybe making your exhale a little bit longer than your inhale. A sinking breath. Possibly exhaling everything out and holding it for 1, 2, and 3. And inhaling in. 2 more times, just like that at your own pace, exhaling it out. Holding the breath out for 3 counts. And just returning to your regular breath. If you have more time, you can always stay here in Shavasana for however long you need to. If you have a limited amount of time, you can start to take some deeper inhales, filling the lungs all the way up from belly button to center of chest to collarbones, and exhaling collarbones, chest, belly. Softly wiggling your fingers and your toes, and bending one knee at a time, bringing feet flat to the floor. On an inhale, take your arms up overhead and stretch through your fingertips. Exhale, roll over to your right side for a few breaths. And then pressing yourself all the way up to whatever seat you like best. Keeping your eyes closed or open. Hands palms down or palms up onto your knees. On your next exhale, drop your fingertips down to the floor. Inhale, sweep the hands all the way up. Open your eyes, look up at your palms. Exhale, hands to heart. Peace and namaste. Thank you so much for joining me today for this focus on the kidney and bladder meridians. I hope you enjoyed it. Please check out the other yin classes I have online on the YouTube channel. I also have some hatha yoga classes, some vinyasa, and also some restorative with home props, not just using what you can buy, but what you can use off your bed or sofa or whatever you need. So thank you so much for taking the time to spend with me, and I hope to see you again on YouTube.